وخاصة فيما يخص خطاب الكراهية والعنف. هنا ربما فيه يعني إجراءات ردعية كبيرة وثقيلة فيما يخص كل هذه الظواهر اللي ربما الدولة كانت موجودة في الميدان وتحارب يعني بقوة في الميدان كل هذه الظواهر اللي تمس يعني عدد كبير من في الحقيقة من الدول. ولكن هنا ربما مستوى تاع اليقظة تاع السلطات السياسية والجزائر جعلت أنها كانت يعني متفطنة دون لانتيسيباسيون ووضعت أنظمة قانونية لمحاربة كل هذه الظواهر.
أشكرك شكرا جزيلا الخبير الدولي في شؤون الهجرة والشؤون الأمنية في منطقة الساحل أستاذ حسن قاسم، شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا.
مستمعينا الأفاضل دقيقة في أمان الله.
With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
Interior Minister Said Sahid has paid a visit to the victims of the flood that swamped over the eastern province of Sila, to whom he conveyed the condolences of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. The Minister of State in charge of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has held in New York a series of high-level bilateral meetings with senior UN officials, including the Under-Secretary General for Peace Operations. The Spanish government has decided to join the 34-member coalition known as the Group of Hague, led by South Africa and Colombia, with a view to impose new sanctions against the Israeli occupying government. Hello and welcome on Radio Algeria International. I'm your host, Miriam Bershi. The Minister of the Interior, Local Authorities and Transport, Mr. Said Sahid, has paid a visit to the victims of the flood that swamped over the eastern province of Msila and inquire their health conditions at the public hospital establishment of Sidi Issa Msila. On the occasion, he conveyed the message from the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, in which the head of the state reiterated the necessity to provide the best health conditions to the victims. On the same occasion, the Interior Minister took stock of the situation, notably the damage caused by the floods that hit the region recently.
We have been sent by the President of the Republic himself to be here with you, to offer condolences and to examine your situation and the condition of the city. The situation will be addressed as a top priority, especially the case of Wet Sidi Issa, since 3 rivers meet in the same area, making it impossible to prevent floods in that region. We will also examine the rehabilitation of what has been destroyed because of these floods.
He listened to the concerns of the residents related notably to infrastructure and reiterated the head of state's commitment to inquire their living conditions. The Speaker of the Council of the Nation, Mr. Azzouz Nasri, has received a delegation from the administration of the Shura Council of the Sultanate of Oman, now on a working visit to Algeria. The visit by the delegation from the Shura Council of the Sultanate of Oman at the invitation of the National People's Assembly is part of efforts to strengthen parliamentary cooperation between Algeria and the Sultanate of Oman and to strengthen traditions of dialogue and exchange of experiences between the legislative institutions of the two countries. In his speech, Mr. Nasri highlighted the strength of Algerian-Omani relations, marked by mutual respect, understanding and coordination, as well as a shared civilizational and historical heritage, and the strong political will of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, and His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq, to strengthen bilateral cooperation and build an exemplary strategic partnership in the interest of the two brotherly peoples. The Minister of Foreign Trade and Export Promotion, Mr. Kamel Rizig, has received the head of the European Union delegation in Algeria, Diego Melado, here in Algiers, with whom he discussed ways of strengthening joint trade and economic cooperation. The meeting was attended by the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Denmark to Algeria, Mrs. Catherine from Hoya, and the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Spain to Algeria, Fernando Moran. The meeting focused on how to strengthen trade and economic cooperation between Algeria and the EU within the framework of a balanced partnership and a win-win approach. The Minister for National Solidarity, Family and Women's Affairs, Soraya Munouchi, has received the representative of the United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF, in Algeria, Katarina Johansson, here in Algiers, with whom she discussed prospects and ways of strengthening cooperation between the two countries or the two parties. During the meeting, the two sides examined prospects for cooperation with the UN agency and explored ways of strengthening programs already implemented jointly to improve childcare and develop programs. On the occasion, the two parties discussed several issues of common concern, including the promotion of children's rights, the strengthening of policies to protect children, support for the rights of children with special needs, and ways of developing training for those working with children. UNICEF's representative in Algeria shared her willingness to participate in and support all initiatives undertaken by the national solidarity sector, highlighting her will to strengthen cooperation and exchange of expertise between the ministry and the UN agency, and to broaden the areas for the implementation of joint projects and activities in the fields of training, transfer of expertise, awareness raising, and information on children's rights. Still in Algiers, the Minister of Religious Affairs and Waqfs or Endowments, Mr. Youssef Ben Merdi, has received the Minister of Endowments and Islamic Affairs of the State of Qatar, Mr. Ghanem bin Shaheen bin Ghanem Al Ghanim. During the meeting, the ministers discussed prospects for bilateral cooperation in the areas of religious affairs and endowments, as well as the management of institutions. The meeting resulted in the signing of an implementation program of a cooperation agreement reflecting the common will of both countries to develop joint initiatives in this area with the aim of promoting religious action and promoting values of moderation. In a statement made on the occasion, the Qatari minister stressed that the agreement marks a new stage in the development of bilateral relations in the service of issues of common concerns.
At the invitation of the Ministry of Religious Affairs and Endowments of Algerian Republic, I had the honor to take part in this meeting, and in exchanges with colleagues, a cooperation agreement was signed between the two ministries, which we hope will constitute the starting point of developed relations and strengthened cooperation in this field, which is important for all.
Vice Part Minister Ben Merdi highlighted the great importance of cooperation existing between Algeria and Qatar, saying that the executive program side will strengthen collaboration mechanisms in various areas such as Islamic publications, the exchange of scientific knowledge, and visits by professors and imams, as well as digitization, modernization and training. Mr. Ben Merdi held the pioneering experience of the State of Qatar in the area of endowment, expressing Algeria's willingness to develop fruitful cooperation bridges in the interest of both brotherly countries, whether in terms of Islamic culture or religious discourse.
The implementation of the program was set up in order to develop mechanisms of cooperation in the field of Islamic publishing, an exchange of scientific experiences, and the visits of professors and sheikhs or ulamas within the framework of the digitization and modernization. The State of Qatar has taken an important step in the field of digitization, and we are also working to intensify these efforts, as well as to strengthen skills in training while creating bridges of cooperation, whether in the field of Islamic culture or in relations with guidance and religious discourse.
Let's note that the meeting focused on the activity structure and main missions of the ministry. The Minister of State in charge of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has held in New York a series of high-level bilateral meetings with senior UN officials, including the UN Under-Secretary-General for Peace Operations, and with his counterparts from Germany, Yemen, Egypt, Sudan, and the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, as well as with the Director General of the International Organization for Migration, outside the United Nations General Assembly. Ms. Sharfi reports.
Mr. Attaf's talks with his Egyptian counterpart focused on strengthening historic cooperation existing between Egypt and Algeria, particularly in the economic field, ahead of the 9th session of the High Joint Commission. They also examined the situation in the Middle East, the Palestinian issue, and the Libyan crisis, while his meeting with the Sudanese minister centered on bilateral cooperation and diplomatic efforts to be made to resolve the crisis in Sudan. The repercussions of regional instability on Yemen and Algeria's role in supporting a political settlement through the UN Security Council were also examined during Mr. Attaf's meeting with his Yemeni counterpart. With UN Under-Secretary General Jean-Pierre Lacroix, Mr. Attaf examined the growing challenges facing peace operations and stressed the need to preserve and enhance their role in supporting political processes. His meeting with IOM Director General Amy Pope reviewed Algeria-IOM cooperation and ways to strengthen it to better address migration issues ahead of her planned visit to Algeria. His talks with Sahrawi Foreign Minister Mohammed Yislam Baysat centered on the Western Sahara issue ahead of upcoming UN deadlines, reaffirming support for the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. Finally, with German Foreign Minister John Wadefull, Mr. Attaf reviewed the strong political dialogue and economic partnership linking Algeria and Germany, while discussing prospects of deepening ties ahead of the forthcoming visit by the President of the Republic to Germany. The two ministers also exchanged views on the situation in the Middle East and developments in the Sahel-Sahara region.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and the Spanish government has decided to join the 34-member coalition known as the Group of Hague, led by South Africa and Colombia, with a view to impose new sanctions against the Israeli government. The decision to impose new economic sanctions against the Israeli government and to put an end to its impunity regarding the massacres it carried out in the Gaza Strip was announced during the 80th session of the UN General Assembly. The 34 states have met outside the UN General Assembly to coordinate the legal, diplomatic and economic measures to be taken in order to put a halt to the genocide being perpetrated in Gaza. The meeting coincided with the expiry of a 12-month-long deadline set by UN resolution requesting from the Israeli occupying authorities to abide by the ruling of the International Court of Justice, calling for an end to be put to the occupation of the Palestinian territories. It also urges the other states to abstain from supporting the Israeli occupation. It is worth recalling that Spain also decided to join the donors countries group entrusted with financing the state of Palestine. And the European Union has confirmed that it had reinstated sanctions against Iran following a similar move against Iran by the United Nations. The EU reinstated sanctions against Iran in response, it said, to its continued non-compliance with the nuclear agreement, adding that the door for diplomatic negotiations remains open. The EU said the sanctions, including freezing the assets of the Iranian Central Bank and other Iranian banks, as well as travel bans on certain Iranian officials. The EU was also banning Iran's purchase and transportation of crude oil and the sale or supply of gold and certain naval equipment. Let's recall that the United Nations reinstated an arms embargo and other sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program, following a process triggered by European powers that Tehran has warned will be met with a harsh response. Britain, France and Germany initiated the return of sanctions on Iran at the UN Security Council over accusations it had violated a 2015 deal that aimed to stop its developing a nuclear program bomb. Meanwhile, Iran denies seeking nuclear weapons. And now a reminder of today's top stories. The Interior Minister Said Sayoud has paid a visit to the victims of the flood that swamped over the eastern province of Msila, to whom he conveyed the condolences of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. The Minister of State in charge of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has held in New York a series of high-level bilateral meetings with senior officials and UN officials. The Spanish government has decided to join the 34-member coalition known as the Group of Hague, led by South Africa and Colombia, with a view to impose new sanctions against the Israeli occupying government. And that's it for today's news bulletin. Stay tuned on Radio Algeria International.
and welcome to Inspiring Figures. Today we'll shed light on an Algerian painter, sculptor and writer who is one of the founders of the contemporary Algerian painting and one of the many representatives of sign painting or visual painting. Mohamed Khadda was born in 1930 in the western province of Mostaganem. He had his debuts in the 60s. His influences included Cubism and Arabic calligraphy. He liked the non-figurative or abstract art. He represented a generation of Algerian artists who combined the calligraphic heritage and formal Western abstraction through the 50s. Mohamed Khadda was the eldest of 5 children, 2 of whom died while infants. In 1936, Mohamed Khadda attended a school in Tigdit in Mostaganem in an Arab neighborhood. In 1942, he and his family had to leave Mostaganem because of a famine in the area. The family moved to Tiaret and they moved in with his aunt. They lived in very modest conditions there. 3 months later, he returned to Mostaganem and he went back to school. In 1943, he received a diploma from the school. His father wanted him to get a job as soon as he received his diploma, but one of his teachers gave him a year of respite, so he did not have to settle for a job he did not enjoy. In 1944, Khadda found a job in a printing company called Ain Safra. During the day, Khadda would draw and make sketches for the printing company. He decided to take on a second job in the evening, binding books for different writers such as Omar Al-Khayyam, Abdou Mohammed, Taha Hussein, and others. During the years of resistance against the French, many artists, including Khadda, went and fought for the National Liberation Army. After finishing with the army, he settled down and his career as an artist slowly started to emerge. Often working with a palette of earth tones, Khadda created tactile compositions and layer Arabic writing and calligraphy over atmospheric abstract canvases. For the most part, Mohamed Khadda was a self-taught painter of abstract compositions. He used Arabic characters and signs taken from Berber tattoos in his artwork. Though he was self-taught for part of his life, he also had connections with art schools. In 1947, Khadda met Abdullah bin Antar, an artist from the city of Mostaganem, from which he is native. After their encounter, Khadda enrolled in the École des Beaux-Arts, or College of Fine Arts, where he learned many art techniques such as watercolors, pastels, and paintings. He continued to expand on his painting techniques by painting scenes of meetings in bookstores and flea markets. In 1948, he and bin Antar went to visit a friend in a hospital. It was during his visit that Khadda saw the Museum of Fine Arts, where he was inspired by paintings by Eugène Delacroix, Eugène Fromentin, Théodore Chassériau, and Nasreddin Dine. He was also influenced by sculptures by Auguste Rodin and Antoine Bourdelle. In 1953, Mohammed Khadda traveled to Paris to continue his education. During that time, he studied under Pablo Picasso and learned the styles of Cubism, which greatly influenced his art. He spent a decade in Europe before returning to Algeria. After returning, he worked to set up an art community in Algeria for young aspiring artists to develop their potential skills. In 1964, he and other artists founded the National Union of the Visual Arts. Khadda created the Sign Painters and the School of the Sign in 1967. He also illustrated books for Algerian prominent writers such as Rachid Boujedra and Tahar Djaout. Mohammed Khadda was involved in many art movements and organizations throughout his career that have influenced and will continue to influence art in Africa and the rest of the world. Some of these include the National Union of the Visual Arts, the Ousham or Tattoo Art Movement, the School of Sign, and Sign Painters. He created more than 70 mural paintings in the 70s. He made several art exhibitions in Algeria and abroad and contributed to the emergence of the national cultural movement. He took several responsibilities at the Ministry of Culture, the High Council of Culture, and at the High School of Fine Arts. Mohammed Khadda died in 1991 after a long illness. In 2014, a documentary film, Le Cygne et l'Olivier, or The Sign and the Olive Tree, directed by Jawdet Gessouma, was dedicated to Mohammed Khadda's life and his art. And in tribute to the cultural heritage of the artist, Mohammed Khadda's prize was created in 2014 following the National Colloquium of Visual Arts held in his native city of Mostaganem. That's it for today's program devoted to famous Algerian painter and sculptor Mohammed Khadda. From me, Azza Gassi, and producer Mohammed Yousufi, thank you for joining us. Goodbye for now.
Tipaza is a town on the coast of Algeria. Tipaza was founded by the Phoenicians. It was made a Roman military colony by the Emperor Claudius and afterwards became a municipium. The Roman city was built on 3 small hills which overlooked the sea. The houses, most of which stood on the central hill, no traces remain, but there are ruins of 3 churches. The Great Basilica and the Basilica Alexander on the western hill and the Basilica of Saint Salsa on the eastern hill. 2 cemeteries, the baths, theater, amphitheater, and nympheum. The line of the ramparts can be distinctly traced, and at the foot of the eastern hill, the remains of the ancient harbor. The basilicas are surrounded by cemeteries, which are full of coffins, all of stone and covered with mosaics. The Basilica of Saint Salsa, which has been excavated by Stefan Gsell, consists of a nave and 2 aisles, and still contains a mosaic. The Great Basilica served for centuries as a quarry, but it's still possible to make out the plan of the building, which was divided into 7 aisles. In 484, the Vandal king Huneric sent an Arian bishop to Tipaza, whereupon a large number of the inhabitants fled to Spain, while many of the remainder were cruelly persecuted. After this time, the city disappears from history, and whether or not its ruin was caused by the Arabs, they seem to have made no